Right,
Oh.
this works. Okay, morning everyone. So this is very much a relaxed conversation about words that stress us out. Words like collaboration, partnership, they sound exciting, but as anyone who's tried to set up a partnership or a collaboration, we know that it has many moving parts and it can be really stressful. Have a relaxed conversation and unpack some of these words to give you some ideas and inspirations of what you could do if you are going down the route of setting up your own partnerships. Cleo, let's start by having a nice introduction from yourself about your background, where you're from.
Yes, so hello everyone. Really excited to be part of this conference here. My name is Cleo. I live in Zurich and I'm the head of art partnerships for UBS, which is a wealth manager. And I have about roughly 20 years of experience. I guess I'm a bit of a contradiction because I come from the arts. I studied art history, I worked in museums, and then I kind of went on the dark side of the moon, working in the private sector for a corporate and managing those partnerships with the cultural institutions almost kind of around the world. So we have partners from countries around the world. And I guess what is interesting and what is maybe a key learning, and to kick it off with that, is that many times when I meet partners from the cultural world for the first time, they are very surprised because they expect to be meeting with bankers and they don't. And they meet with people who kind of speak the same language as they do. And I think there is a lot of value in that. And one of the learnings is really that it's always people on both sides of these collaborations. And it's mainly always about how you meet with these people and how you get to understand each other.
So that was interesting because when I met Cleo as well, I was surprised because you introduced yourself as an art historian, and I literally did not know people like this exist in financial services. So just one practical question, which I think other people might have as well. Are you truly a contradiction in the sense that you are the only one of your kind in a financial services firm? Or if you look hard enough in the corporate space, we will find more and more people like you who've come from your background and are now trying to build bridges?
I can't speak obviously for all the big corporates. I'm not the only one in my firm, so we are a very small tribe of art historians working across the firm in different art-related departments. But I think the reason why they hire people like us is because they understood that they kind of need someone like an ambassador or like a translator who is able to truly connect with the other side, because that's actually the secret to success. If you want a working partnership, it's really important that you speak on eye level, and we are kind of translating between our cultural partners and their needs and what they have to offer, and translating it back into the firm and to our colleagues and make them understand how they can actually benefit from that partnership without these two worlds colliding directly, because that creates a lot of misunderstandings and frustrations on both sides. So yes, I do know from other brands that I work with on the big platforms such as Art Basel, that my kind of counterparts in these brands, they also come from an art background. So there's a number of brands that do that.
Okay, so then you make it sound effortless. You're saying we have to build a bridge, and but my question to you is, outside of your team, within UBS as an example, and sometimes when you are speaking to cultural institutions as well, do they see it as a natural collaboration, or do you have to do a lot of work on both sides to convince them that this is something that should happen?
I think it's not really seen as a natural collaboration, obviously. What my experience made me understand is that a lot of cultural institutions have very little knowledge and idea of what they are actually looking for. And so they kind of go out randomly asking different corporates in the private sector to support them and to sponsor their projects or their institutions, but they have no idea what they would like to achieve with that, other than save, get some funding. But they also are not very clear about what they can offer, because in the end, sponsorships is not a donation, so it's not giving money and then we just walk away from it. It's a marketing tool, so the whole goal is to leverage these partnerships. And I think it's on both ends. It's always a mismatch when one of the two sides doesn't really manage the expectations on the other side and doesn't know what they either have to offer or can offer, or what they need from the other partner. So the classic idea is that, yes, I write to this brand and I'm asked them to fund us, and I give them tickets and I put their logo on a wall. And then they're happy. And yes, there used to be a time when that was actually pretty much what happened, but these times are really gone. So sponsorship has transformed a lot in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years. Today the brands all want to do content marketing, so they all want to tell stories. They all want a bit of your content that they can share. And ideally, you get to create a win-win situation where you actually create a content thanks to your partner, because your partner is interested in that, and you are able to achieve something that you might wanted to achieve but don't have the funding for it. And then both sides end up with something new and interesting that benefits them.
So I'll play devil's advocate. I think many cultural institutions don't conceive projects by saying it has to support marketing and it has to provide interesting content. Now that we have you here, a hypothetical situation, what kind of email, suppose an email arrives in your inbox seeking partnership, what are some of the things that you are looking for that really excite you and make you want to say, I'm going to put in the hard work to build this bridge because this is a great project? What are you looking for?
So I do get a lot of these in my inbox. I feel what's important is that I can sense by reading it what the other side expects, what they can bring to the table and what their expectations are. And then I can look if that's something that's interesting for us and if I can match those expectations. That said, what I usually look for is a few slides in a PowerPoint presentation, really, really to the point, because if I start then kind of shopping it around internally and try to find funding for it, these people don't read, at least not more than 3 to 5 slides. So I usually then have to go back to that person who put the request out, saying, hey, you have to be more to the point, you have to cut it down. Don't give me, 2 pages of background. I know it's interesting and I know it's valid, but it's not going to work. So the best thing I get is really someone who is short and precise and who exactly knows what they can offer and what they expect from us.
I think that's a useful point because that was a learning for me as well. Cleo and I briefly worked together on creating proposals. And what pleasantly surprised me was what you were expecting from me. And I think what might make the room slightly happier here is not to give you marketing communications assets, but to come to you with a very clear idea. And then you spend a lot of time working with me so I can help you make sense of it internally. So in a way, you were building that bridge.
And also, I need to understand what they can offer, but not like, 100 tickets and 3 logos and we will put your name in the press release. That's anyway a given. It's more about the opportunities on how we can collaborate. So one thing I do across the about roughly 18 partnerships we're managing is really constantly keep in touch with everyone and talking. Because only if I know what the partners are doing currently, what they're planning, maybe they're planning to produce a film on something or whatever, I can then understand if there is a potential for us to collaborate. So usually what we say is you sign a contract, then you put it in the drawer, and then it's really very much of what you can achieve together that goes beyond that contract. So the contract ticks all the boxes and makes sure that, you know, it's well managed. But it's the interesting things only happen if you look beyond that contract. And that implies if you do have a partnership, go talk to them, be in touch, tell them about your ideas, about your dreams, about your wishes. And maybe 5 won't work, but then the 6th one is spot on. And then your partner goes like, yeah, okay, let's do this together. Because often I realize that our partners also are not aware. We have a lot to offer in a sense of, you know, we have a lot of infrastructure, we have a lot of know-how in the firm. I had partnerships where I was able to offer skills that we have almost naturally within the firm that the partner doesn't. And I say, okay, I give you that person. He's a communication specialist. He's going to look at this with you. And then hopefully you guys can optimize that from your end. That could also be something that you can get from a partner that's maybe not written in a contract.
So that's refreshing for me. Now, just to make it a little bit more real, can you give me examples of, let's say, 2 projects? One which is big and one which is small, because I'm also interested in small beginnings. Give us a couple of examples of the work that you've done, partnership-wise.
I can only think of the big one. A big one was, for example, we collaborated on a big art exhibition. It was a Van Gogh exhibition in Basel. The museum that we collaborated with was pretty much overwhelmed because they've never actually pulled off a blockbuster show. And this one is supposed, and it was a blockbuster show. So they were lacking pretty much everything, from, you know, planning logistics around the visitor flow, selling tickets, and they needed a new ticketing system. And in the end, we had me including, about 4 people who almost switched. So we kind of left UBS and we went to the museum. I was literally working in the museum on the catalog with them because they just had no more time to put it off. And I had colleagues who started to do their bookkeeping, who prepared their ticket, who did the statistics of the visitor flows and everything. So it was literally manpower moving over into the museum and working on that side. And I thought that was a kind of really a nice example of what you don't expect a commercial partner to do for you. And you can get. Another big example is I've worked with the Guggenheim Museum in New York for about 5 years. It was a 5-year project. We set out as complete strangers, obviously, and I was kind of surprised by the mentality of that New York museum. They were very much like, oh, don't touch us. And every time we asked for something, it was like, oh, no, we don't do that. No, really not. And in the end, it was very frustrating at the beginning. I moved to New York. I lived there for a while. I literally went out for drinks, for brunches, for everything with these people, and got really close. And that was really my key learning. The better we knew each other, the more we trusted each other. And in the end, we did fantastic projects. We were never able to pull off at the beginning because we just simply knew who we are, and that the museum knew, okay, if Cleo says that's okay, she's also speaking for us, we can trust her, and then let's do this together. And it was fantastic. We had an absolute great collaboration.
So Guggenheim is nice, moving to New York is nice, but I'm going to push you a little bit more and say,
small things.
How small are you willing to go?
Well, obviously it's a big corporate, so there is not so many small projects. But what in a smaller scale, what I really enjoyed is in Switzerland, the bank is a retail bank, so our audience is slightly different. It's a retail audience, a very large public. And one of our museums came to us and said, you know, we would really like to improve the way we work for families and children. And we literally sat down and brainstormed and said, okay, what can we do? And we came up with these kind of Sunday morning brunch formats where they were able to then host families and children and even me, I learned a lot, and I've been actually using it quite often ever since on these activities that we came up with for children. Okay. And so it was also for me a way to expand, and I'm sometimes stealing these ideas and using them still for other partnerships. So
I love that you've gone from the Guggenheim to then designing events for families and children, and I think that's a really interesting range. So what advice would you give to the people in the room? Let's assume some of them are doing great work and they want to start out on this journey of having a dialogue with people like yourselves. Where do they start?
I think just don't go out and ask anyone. Think about who fits you and also what size fits you. I mean, size does matter in that case. So it's really, if you are a small institution, you're well rooted in your local environment, then don't look too far. Try to find someone who has a similar profile and who will, you know, have the same kind of goals and visions that they can share. Don't go to a big corporate. If your project is global and goes around the world and ticks kind of the obvious boxes, which is, you know, there is a place at one point where a corporate can invite clients and guests to, you have a certain exposure that you can guarantee towards the media and a public, then yes, but then go out there and ask yourself, which brand do I feel comfortable with? Because it's I know in the end it's always about the money, but you'll be much more successful if you partner up with someone who you are also feeling represents the same values and that there is an overlap of values that you share with this. A good example in the arts is BP sponsoring one of the big museums in London. And it's just always a very difficult marriage because it's BP very clearly is in the arts to whitewash some of the things they don't do. They should be in an entirely different space, in my regard, and do and address, you know, their pain points and just rather maybe work on those. But so working with as a museum with BP will always be a bit challenging for both sides.
But what I like about what you're saying, so the mindset that happened for me was, I'm never the person who can do a 30-second elevator pitch. And that's something you never expected from me. And you said, you know what, I will sit down and I will work with you and I will give you great advice. I think in that spirit of collaboration, as much as you can, I think it'll be fascinating perhaps for the room to hear some of the pressures you face when you are trying to conceive a partnership. So what are you expected to answer to? What are you expected to deliver? Would you be happy to share that?
So we have clear goals. They do change over time, and they're also slightly different on the audiences that we're dealing with. So on a global scale, we need partners that match our size very clearly. Art Basel is a good example because they can obviously offer already a quantity of benefits that works for me in order to really make this partnership a profitable one for the firm to invest in. That said, that there is quite a substantial amount of people that we can invite to the fairs. We can do side programs around it and all of that. So I think the challenges I usually face internally is that I need to maximize the impact internally without kind of overpowering the cultural partner I have. And often this can be done with, in the end, with really good content. It goes through the content. If the content is convincing and we can work with it, then the rest can follow. If I have a partner who is not producing powerful and impactful content, then I'm starting to have a hard time to kind of explain why we are teaming up with such a partner. Because in the end, it's for the markets. I mean, their business is banking, and not. It's just my business is art. So I do have to make them feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, that makes sense for the firm. We have a big advantage with us because we have a big art collection in the house. That's like the backbone of why we are in the arts. Okay. And that gives us a lot of credit internally and externally. But internally, and that's really a very comfortable starting point, no one is going to question why we are in the arts. They might question one or the other partnership and go like, really, we really have to work with these people. But if I can show them, yes, because you know what, they delivered this and that. And social media, by the way, because that's what we're all here for, is a great help in that sense, because we have dedicated art social media channels, and we can literally prove the impact that some partners have with their content, and because everything is measurable there. So that's helping us to get our voice out there, not only out there, but also internally out there.
So, in a way, what's interesting is you face the same pressures, which is audience engagement.
Yeah.
You have to demonstrate that, and a lot of the cultural sector is also now trying to look at new forms of audience engagement. You once described your department within UBS as a lab, which I found very fascinating. So one last question, perhaps. Even within our SMARTplaces partners, our cultural institutions, they are working on what I feel are really radical themes like inclusion and integration and sustainability and identity, which is really fascinating. You know, they're not necessarily thinking in, we have to produce an exhibition. So if you think of, engagement and where the cultural sector is heading in towards of trends, what are some of the trends that are exciting you? What would you like to focus on?
So I think one of the trends that I can see now in the industry, as I already touched upon, is content generation, storytelling. It's a big theme. And I think we all are going to move towards social responsibility and sustainability. I think it's great. It's going to be very fashionable to be sustainable. And I think the private sector will play a role in that and has to play a role. And we now slowly start kind of looping in our art partners, because we start working in the sustainability field. And I want to make art part of that. And as you said, we have an advantage. We are a bit of a lab within the firm because our content is less restricted by regulations and policies and everything. So they come to us sometimes to test stuff. And I think that's where we now try to break ground. So the next step is really to get our cultural partners to follow us in that new direction of tackling some of the sustainability issues that will be really urgently needed to be looked at in the future.
Great. So I think that's a really hopeful tone that you've set for partnerships. Yes, at some point it is about PowerPoint slide decks, but what you're also saying is it's about collaboration and openness and understanding both sides. So Cleo's around today and tomorrow. If you would like to have a chat, I'm sure you're happy for people to approach you and have a conversation.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you stepped down.